Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we are having a discussion about the Eye of Terror. Is it time for the Imperium to strike back? General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we are discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the Eye of Terror, the power base of chaos, or at least it used to be. At the end of the Horus Heresy, as the Imperium moved into the aptly named Scouring Years, the forces of the fallen War Master were purged from the Imperium upon world after world. And so it was that the majority of the remaining Traitor Legions had nowhere left to turn other than the Eye of Terror. En masse they retreated within this gigantic warp rift, fleeing before the enraged and vengeful Imperium forces. While they received a measure of respite and solace within its borders, they also saw this move become their jail. Space travel around the Eye was fraught with danger, most of it simply impossible. Only one truly stable path remained in and out of its borders: the Cadian Gate. Over time, this system became the most heavily fortified and defended system within the Imperium entire, save perhaps the Throne World itself. And well, this was the setting throughout most of the history of 40k as we know it. The forces of the Traitor Legions chained within the foreboding Eye. And really because of that, the Eye of Terror became the focal point of evil within the entire 40k setting, home to the greatest enemies of the Imperium, the servants of the ruinous powers. Now, while over the years we gained some insight and knowledge into what life was like within the Eye, it always largely remained a gaze from afar, a place in which the Imperium could never truly go. The Eye of Terror was a place of legends, the only place in the galaxy where Primarchs could still walk, where names such as Mortarion, Magnus, Fulgrim all still lived and breathed, a place where even Leman Russ may still be alive to this day. For me, I'll never forget the feeling I had when reading the classic Uriel Ventress series, when Uriel was taken to the world of Medringard, the Iron Warrior's homeworld within the Eye of Terror. Just knowing that a Primarch was upon this world, it was just something else. And this was the impact of the fabled Eye of Terror. Now, as we know, the setting would evolve with the return of the loyal Primarch Rabute Guilliman and the success of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade. The warp would flood across the galaxy like a tide, forming the great rift known as the Cicatrix Maledictum. Chaos was free. No longer were they bound within the Eye's chains. No longer were the traitor forces limited to small raiding parties. Now the Imperium faced the full wrath of the ruinous powers. As I've said before, we really moved into a golden age of lore, a time where legendary names returning became a real possibility. A time where Primarchs walked the battlefield before our very eyes, and we saw the Emperor himself awaken. Now, one of the developments I've found particularly interesting is, in the face of this growing threat, how the forces of the Imperium have become emboldened to cross boundaries like never before, figuratively and literally. Inquisitor Greyfax and the Grey Knights entered the Eye of Terror on a mission from Rabute Guilliman, determined to find the artifact known as the Eye of Night. And as we know, Guilliman's befriending of the Eldari led to them entering the Eye on a quest to find the Hand of Darkness, having to face the dangers of Nurgle's Garden to do so. From a figurative sense, it certainly seems like the boundary against the Eye of Terror has been greatly lessened for the Imperium. For Guilliman himself, it appears he is more willing than ever to use the artifacts of the enemy against them, or to at least prevent the enemy from using them themselves. And if this means entering realms such as the Eye of Terror, then so be it. In fact, it seems he is more than willing to do so. So with that in mind, could we see an evolution of this? With the Traitor Legions now bestriding the galaxy, claiming and founding new empires, has attention been turned away from their one-time power base of the Eye? We've seen already Magnus transport the planet of the Sorcerers out of the Eye of Terror and back into real space. In Guilliman's desire to strike back against the forces of chaos, should perhaps the ultimate strike back be considered? The next stage of the Indomitus Crusade, taking the fight right into the heart of the Eye of Terror, removing their power base whilst their attentions are truly invested elsewhere. Obviously, this is nothing but a bit of fun speculation, and it goes without saying it is extremely unlikely to ever happen. However, I really do think it could be an intriguing and exciting development to the next stage of the narrative, and actually would make a lot of sense with the lore as we know it. Firstly, the forces of Abaddon are still pushing against the remnants of the Cadian sector, as the rest of the Ruinous Powers forces spill out in a tide everywhere else. And the first stage of the Indomitus Crusade actually did have a fleet designated with heading straight for Cadia, Fleet Secundus. This fleet's job to deliver a sledgehammer blow right into the face of the enemy. If Fleet Secundus were successful, it could perhaps be merely the first of multiple objectives. As I said, Guilliman's entire purpose for the Indomitus Crusade was to take the fight back to Chaos, and he has done exactly that with Stage 1. Is he really likely to now just sit back on the defensive within Imperium Sanctus, just letting the forces of the enemy keep whittling down what they have? Personally, I find that highly unlikely. A natural evolution to Fleet Secundus' objective would be to continue that push, not only to Cadia, but also beyond it, to show the forces of the Ruinous Powers that the Imperium is far from done. While they may have let them off lightly in the Scouring, they will never make that mistake again. The Imperium will push into the heart of the Eye of Terror, and they will obliterate the so-called homes of the traitors. I think that would be the beauty of a campaign such as this, because so often the Imperium is merely attempting to save a world. Here, it would be nothing but a war intended to destroy. This would be the forces of the Imperium unleashed. Their only objective to destroy as many worlds of the traitor forces as possible. To destroy the Traitor Legions' bases where they feel most protected, where maybe they have taken their safety for granted. Obviously, this would require massive reinforcement and numbers, but there is a reason why we're only at stage 1 of the Indomitus Crusade after all. There are going to be more stages to follow, and thus more Indomitus fleets. Imagine a new founding of Primaris, legions of Astartes, with a sole objective of obliterating everything within the Eye of Terror, whose sole purpose is to destroy the enemy. But secondly, apart from making a lot of sense as a logical next step for Fleet Secundus's first objective, a campaign such as this within the heart of the Traitor Legions could also make sense in the wider context. You would expect such a move to draw a lot of attention from the Traitor Legions. While they certainly wouldn't have any sentimental value to these homeworlds whatsoever, it is worth remembering these Traitor Legionaries are the very same ones who marched upon Terra itself, and they fall prey to the same flaws as they did then: pride. No Traitor Legion would simply let their homeworlds be destroyed, not through some sense of sentimentality, but through simple pride. How dare the upstart Guilliman think he can walk right into the Eye of Terror and have his way with our worlds? Fulgrim, Perturabo, Lorgar, all of the traitor Primarchs would be infuriated by this, and as such the bulk of their forces would undoubtedly be recalled to smash this invading force. And at the very least, this would draw their eyes away from elsewhere, which could be a very good thing for Guilliman's invasion of the Imperium Nihilus. We know Guilliman wants to cross the rift in force. We know, despite the best efforts of his advisors, he refuses to give in on the Dark Imperium. However, an invasion of such epic proportions as this requires monumental undertaking and is fraught with difficulty, none more so than the amount of attention it would draw from enemy forces. If Guilliman is to cross the rift in force successfully, he needs a diversionary tactic to bide him time. I highly doubt any campaign across the rift into the Dark Imperium is going to compromise of one mere Indomitus fleet. It would be several at the very least, multiplying the difficulties of launching it tenfold, and as such he would need a diversion that garnered equal attention. An invasion of the Eye of Terror, threatening the power bases of the Traitor Legions, would most certainly do that. And now thirdly, it would also open up the possibilities for major developments, but without forcing or jeopardizing the dynamic too much. For example, the destruction of, say, Medringard, the Iron Warriors' homeworld, could be seen as a major victory for the forces of the Imperium, further enhancing that feeling that maybe, just maybe, Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade does have a chance. However, in reality, it doesn't really change anything. The bonds tying the traitors to the Eye are already broken, and so they are free to found empires and claim worlds anywhere they like, as they are attempting to do so right now. But again, it gives that sense of achievement for the Imperium. And I'm using Medringard as just an example. It could really be any of the Traitor Legion's homeworlds. It would also bring the war one step closer to the home of the Chaos Gods themselves. And as we know with the ending of Dark Imperium Godblight, Guilliman and the Emperor of Mankind very much intend on bringing the war straight to the gods of chaos themselves. And a campaign within the Eye of Terror opens up the possibility of glimpses of a certain Ravenlord, Just imagine Korax coming into contact with Grey Shield's sons of his lineage. What on earth would he make of these Primaris recruits? Again, we're just having a bit of fun and speculation here, but in all seriousness, I really do feel the legendary Eye of Terror is now more accessible than ever, and that really opens up the possibility of some amazing stories. The legends of this domain now becoming truly reachable, with agents of the Imperium crossing its borders, with forces of the Eldari daring its reaches more than ever. The sightings of lost Primarchs become very real possibilities. So too do more powerful appearances of the Emperor himself. In a realm so immersed within the Immaterium, if the Emperor of mankind were to appear within the Eye itself, it could perhaps be the most powerful sighting yet. And considering what we saw in the confrontation with Mortarion, that could be a very powerful Emperor indeed. But as always guys, what do you think? Should Guilliman contemplate invading the Eye itself? Would this draw the necessary attention away from elsewhere? Is it something that could even be possible? Could the Imperium draw together enough strength to push beyond Cadia? And if so, could they really manage to destroy one of the Traitor Legion's homes? Would the Imperium take on this responsibility alone, or would Guilliman once more call on his Eldari allies? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.